Welcome. In the land of Skyrim, the rugged northern province of Tamriel, lies the home of many diverse races, each with a unique history, culture, and set of abilities. From the hardy native Nords to the reptilian Argonians, and even the long-lost Snow Elves, every race in Skyrim has its own secrets and stories to tell. Today, we'll journey through every race found in the land of Skyrim, exploring fun facts, lore, notable figures, and the roles each race plays in Skyrim's society. We'll cover the 10 playable races of men, mer, and beast folk, as well as significant non-playable races that feature in Skyrim's lore, with each section focusing on the race's highlights, their history in Skyrim, cultural lore, strengths and weaknesses, and other notable characters of each race. By the end of this video, you'll understand the rich tapestry of each race that inhabits Skyrim, or once inhabited, the land of the Nords. So without further ado, let's begin our journey with the most prominent race of Skyrim, the Nords. Children of the Sky and Sons of Skyrim, Nords are the tall, fair-haired humans native to the land, often calling themselves the Children of the Sky. They believe the very sky breathed life into them at the throat of the world, Skyrim's tallest mountain. Renowned for their hardiness and warrior culture, shrugging off even magical frost with ease. And this makes sense given that they originate from the frigid continent of Atmora and Skyrim's harsh climate. Culturally, Nords are a proud and combative people, valuing honor, family, and martial prowess. They are also known to use the power of the voice, or Thum, in the language of the Dove. In fact, the strongest Nord warriors, called tongues, could shout armies to pieces, a tradition echoed by the Greybeards of Skyrim, who studied the way of the voice. Although Nords were not always the only people in Skyrim. In the Merethic era, Skyrim was first inhabited by the Snow Elves, but the first humans in Skyrim were Atmorans, ancestors of the Nords, who migrated from Atmora under the legendary hero Ysgramor. According to lore, Ysgramor's settlement at Sarthal ended in tragedy when the Snow Elves attacked in the Night of Tears, destroying the city completely. Ysgramor escaped back to Atmora and returned with his 500 companions, launching a vengeful war that drove the Snow Elves to near extinction. This conflict, along with the subsequent battles, like the decisive battle of the Moose Ring, where the Snow Elf Prince was slain, cemented Nord dominance in Skyrim. By the First Era, Ysgramor's descendants established the first empire of the Nords, even conquering parts of Morrowind and High Rock at the time. Though the empire eventually receded, Nords have ever since seen Skyrim as their sacred homeland. They call it the Fatherland, and themselves the sons and daughters of Skyrim. Throughout history, Nords have been at the forefront of major events, from the Dragon War of ancient times to the current Stormcloak Rebellion in the Fourth Era. Their old Nord gods, like Kine, whom they say gifted them the voice, and Shor, their version of Lorkhan, and their heroes, Ysgramor, Jurgen Windcaller. All these beings still influence Skyrim's culture and politics. In the Fourth Era, Nords comprise the majority of Skyrim's population, filling all walks of life: warriors, jarls, farmers, merchants, and so much more. True to their heritage, many Nords are warriors or adventurers at heart. Skyrim's civil war is essentially a Nord uprising, with the Stormcloaks against the Imperial Empire. And no, not that one. This conflict highlights a core Nord trait: fierce independence. Even in the Imperial Legion, Nords often serve as hardy soldiers renowned for bravery. Nords also make excellent smiths and craftsmen, with many of Skyrim's famous weapons, like the Axe of Wuthrod, and its distinctive steel armor coming from Nord artisanship. Their economy is driven by things like mining, hunting, and mercenary work, which suit their physical prowess. As mentioned, Nords are resistant to frost, a trait valued in Skyrim's cold climate. Many Nords also have the battle cry ability, a powerful shout that makes enemies flee for a short time. Nords tend to excel in combat skills, with skills in two-handed weapons being one of the most prominent. They're often portrayed as straightforward and less inclined to magic, though there are Nord mages too. And of course, in Skyrim, many of the land's key figures are Nords. Some notable figures include the recently slain High King Torrig, whose death sparked the civil war with the Stormcloaks, and these Stormcloaks are led by Ulfric Stormcloak of Windhelm, who claims the kingship of Skyrim and the title of High King. Farther away to the center of Skyrim, found in Whiterun, there is Jarl Balgruuf the Greater, a wise ruler walking a fine line of neutrality in the Civil War. And as mentioned previously, ancient heroes like Ysgramor and Jurgen Windcaller, who founded the Greybeards after the Dragon War. Even Tiber Septim, the emperor who became Talos, is held by many to have been a Nord by birth, and with his might became a man deified as a hero god. In Skyrim's storyline, the last Dragonborn is often depicted as a Nord, though the Dragonborn can canonically be any other race, although personally I've always found it a little interesting that a beast race like Khajiit could be the Dragonborn. It's just a little funny given the whole Skyrim is only for the Nords thing. But from the High King to the humble farmers, the Nords' influence is seen everywhere in Skyrim. Proud, tough, and traditional, the Nords truly embody the spirit of Skyrim, which is why they often refer to it as the Land of the Nords, or the Old Kingdom in their legends. The Imperials, the cosmopolitan diplomats of Cyrodiil. Imperials, also called Cyrodiils, are native to Cyrodiil, the central province of the Empire. In Skyrim, they represent the Imperial Empire's presence, well-spoken, well-educated folk who often serve as administrators, soldiers, and diplomats. Imperials are typically medium-build humans with a coppery or pale complexion, known more for their organizational skills and discipline than raw physical prowess or magical talent. Culturally, Imperials have built Tamriel's greatest empire, the First Elysian Empire, later the Septim Empire, and thus value law, governance, and trade. They are shrewd negotiators and skilled traders, contributing to their reputation as a wealthy, cosmopolitan race. In terms of temperament, they often come off as polished and disciplined, favoring strategy and diplomacy to solve problems. The ancestors of the Imperials were the Nedic people, who lived in Cyrodiil. Over time, these ancient peoples, mixed of Needs, Atmorans, and some intermarriage with elves, formed distinct cultures in Cyrodiil. The organized Nibonese in the fertile Nibne Valley and the warlike Colovians in the west. The imperial race, as known in the Fourth Era, is essentially the blend of those groups unified under one nation. Historically, Imperials rose to prominence under figures like Saint Alessia, who led a rebellion against the Aelid elves and founded the first empire of men in Cyrodiil. Later, under Riemann Cyrodiil in the First Era, and then Tiber Septim, or Talos, in the Second Era's end. The Imperials built empires that spanned nearly all Tamriel, and by the time of Skyrim in the Fourth Era, the empire, now ruled by the Mede dynasty, is still largely Imperial-led, though weakened by the recent Great War against the Aldmeri Dominion. Imperials in lore are known to have overthrown their elven overlords, the Aelids, long ago, and thereafter established the Eight Divines religion, and later the Nine Divines when adding Talos. Thus, they are often associated with the Church of the Divines, the Imperial Legions, or Synod, the mages' organization in Cyrodiil, though those aren't present in Skyrim, of course. Their legacy is the imperial law and stability that many provinces, including Skyrim until recently, have lived under. Imperials in Skyrim are mainly seen as soldiers of the Imperial Legion, or occupying officials. The current Legion in Skyrim, led by General Tullius, is trying to quell the Stormcloak Rebellion and keep Skyrim under the Empire's control. Many legionaries are indeed ethnic Imperials, though some local Nords have joined as well. Imperials in Skyrim often hold positions such as stewards, governors, or traders. For instance, Proventus Avenici, the steward of Whiterun's Jarl, is imperial, and valued for his administrative council. Likewise, Adriana Avenici, his daughter, identifies culturally as imperial, though of mixed heritage, and is a skilled blacksmith in Whiterun. Imperials tend to bring a cosmopolitan flair even to Skyrim's rustic towns, sometimes clashing with Nord traditionalism. We see this with the Empire's ban on Talos worship, with the Talmor especially enforcing this imperial law, causing resentment among many Nord Talos worshippers. And despite these tensions, many Imperials in Skyrim just want peace and prosperity for the province, believing in unity over division. Economically, they are often wealthy merchants or savvy businessmen, and in-game reflection is the Imperial racial ability, Imperial Luck, said to help them find more gold than others. This hints that the Imperials excel in commerce and organization, often contributing to town economies as shopkeepers, bookkeepers, or entrepreneurs. In terms of innate abilities, Imperials are versatile, but particularly gifted in diplomacy. Their special power, Voice of the Emperor, allows an Imperial to calm people around them once a day, a reflection of their collective charisma in diplomatic training. Imperials often have balanced skills. In Skyrim's starting stats, they get bonuses and skills like Restoration, Heavy Armor, and One-Handed, reflecting a blend of combat and minor magical aptitude. They're certainly not as specialized in war as Nords or Redguards, nor as attuned to magic as Bretons. Instead, they're jacks of all trades who thrive in structured environments like legions or guilds. Many Imperials favor sword and shield combat and wear the famed Imperial heavy armor on duty. Aside from General Tullius, who commands the Imperial war effort in Skyrim, there's the elusive Emperor Titus Mede II himself, who actually visits Skyrim in the Dark Brotherhood quest line. The Penitus Oculatus, Commander Morrow, is another Imperial figure who's head of the Emperor's security detail in Skyrim. Thus, Imperials in Skyrim tend to be the outsiders running the show from a bureaucratic standpoint, and their notable figures are often found in the military or government positions. They might not have the popularity among Nords, but their influence is felt in law, order, and cosmopolitan touches in Skyrim's cities. Redguards, the desert warriors of Hammerfell. The Redguards are a race of men known as Tamriel's most gifted warriors, hailing from the distant desert province of Hammerfell. They have dark skin and often curly or tightly braided hair and athletic builds, reflecting their heritage in the hot climates of Hammerfell, and long before, the lost continent of Yakuta. Culturally, Redguards prize martial prowess, independence, and honor, something that sounds not too distant from the Nordfolk of Skyrim. They descend from the Yakutans, a people who migrated to Tamriel after a cataclysm sank their homeland. Legend has it that the name Redguard comes from Ra Gada, warrior wave, the first Yakutan warriors who swept into Hammerfell in the First Era. Redguards have a fierce, proud warrior culture, renowned for their skills with blade and shield, and for producing legendary swordsmen known as the Sword Singers. They also have a reputation for resenting formal magic, seeing it as dishonorable or risky, instead favoring physical combat or pragmatic forms of magic like destruction, which they equate to force. As one lore quote puts it, in Hammerfell, they don't much like spellcasters. If you use magic, you're weak or wicked. Although, as mentioned, Redguards do tolerate destructive magic as it suits their culture of warfare. Redguards originate from Yakuta, an archipelago continent far to the west of Tamriel. Sometime in the First Era, Yakuta was destroyed, possibly by the cataclysmic event which the Redguard myth attributes to misuse of powerful sword singing or the god's wrath. The survivors, fierce warriors and seafarers, landed on the shores of Volenfell, or modern-day Hammerfell. These immigrants conquered Hammerfell from the native orcs and Nedic people. Since then, Redguards have established the nation of Hammerfell, which has a rich history of its own. They fought off attempts at conquest by the Breton-led Empire of the Septums, joined the Septim Empire voluntarily later, and most recently in the Fourth Era, fought the Aldmeri Dominion to a standstill in the Great War. In fact, when the Empire signed a peace treaty known as the White Gold Concordat, which ceded parts of southern Hammerfell to the elves, the proud Redguards refused and continued the war alone, eventually forcing the Dominion to completely withdraw from Hammerfell. This led Hammerfell to secede from the Empire, and by the time of Skyrim, Hammerfell is an independent Redguard nation, the only country to have truly defeated the Aldmeri Dominion in open war in recent history. Culturally, Redguards trace their lineage to Yakutan heroes like Frandar Hunding, the first sword singer who wrote the Book of Circles, and Devad the Singer. They maintain a Yakutan pantheon of gods, such as Ruptga and Satakal, and have a tradition of ancestor worship as well. The unique cultural practice of the sword singing is the ability to form a magical sword from one's soul, a shihai, though by Skyrim's era, this art is supposedly lost. It underscores how integral swordsmanship is to their identity. Redguards are also famous for their navy and pirate sailors. Even in Skyrim, you'll hear of Redguard pirates or see Redguard-style curved swords. While Skyrim itself is far from Hammerfell, Redguards still appear in the province as mercenaries, wanderers, or refugees. Many Redguards who travel make a living by the sword. In Whiterun, for example, a Redguard named Amren struggles to preserve his family legacy via his father's sword. Redguard mercenary companies are not too uncommon, with one of the most prominent ones being the Alakir Warriors, a band in search of the Redguard fugitive in Skyrim. The Alakir in Skyrim wear traditional Redguard curved scimitars and light armor, showcasing their heritage. Another Redguard presence is the Dawnguard. The leader in Skyrim's chapter, Isran, is a Redguard himself, channeling his people's no-nonsense warrior ethos into hunting vampires. Because Redguards value independence, some even emphasize with Skyrim's Stormcloaks. Others, remembering Tiber Septim's conquests, distrust the Empire. Economically, individual Redguards often become skilled smiths or spice and silk traders when abroad. You won't find a Redguard beggar. After all, their culture's emphasis on personal responsibility and pride means they tend to carve a living through the sword or trade. Quite literally in some cases, usually get mentioned in Skyrim's markets, adding to their diverse trade. Redguards, as such, are naturally hardy and quick, built for survival and battle. They're found to have high resistance to poison, a trait attributed to their strong constitutions honed in the harsh deserts, and perhaps a legacy of resisting deadly creatures. This makes them excellent at shrugging off venomous attacks from snakes, spiders, and so on. Moreover, Redguards possess the ability called Adrenaline Rush, which allows them to regenerate stamina 10 times faster for a short duration. This absolutely gives them a huge edge in battle, and are feared warriors on the front lines. Redguards also excel in one-handed weapon skills, and they get bonuses to skills like archery, blocking, smithing, and destruction magic, which continues to show their inclination toward combat versatility. Interestingly as well, their starting destruction bonus and cultural note about liking destruction magic indicate that while they distrust sorcery, they don't mind harnessing elemental forces to smite foes. Some of the most notable Redguards in history are Sai Sahan, while not found in Skyrim's timeline, but is a hero from Hammerfell, found in Elder Scrolls Online, and Cyrus the Restless, a hero from the Elder Scrolls Adventures game Redguard. Within Skyrim, however, there are several memorable Redguards we can find. Nazir, a Redguard assassin in the Dark Brotherhood. There's also Amren in Whiterun, who's notable for teaching the player a bit about Redguard familial duty via his Lost Sword quest. And there's also the formidable Ebony Warrior, clad in full ebony armor, often considered one of the toughest encounters in the game. So, whether as heroes, villains, or simply tough-as-nails allies, Redguards in Skyrim leave a strong impression of honor, strength, and self-reliance. Bretons, the Spellborn of High Rock. Bretons are a human race with elven ancestry, hailing from the province of High Rock, often of medium stature with fair to tan skin, Bretons might look like ordinary humans, but they carry a special heritage. They are actually the descendants of an ancient intermingling between humans and elves, specifically between Aldmere and local Nidic humans. In fact, the very name Breton is said to derive from the Aldmere's word Beritu, meaning half, indicating their half-elven lineage. This mixed ancestry endows Bretons with a natural aptitude for magic and a resistance to magical energies. Bretons are often regarded as intelligent, resourceful, and eccentric, with a culture that blends chivalric feudalism and a love of learning. High Rock is a land of petty kingdoms, knightly orders, and mystic traditions, and Bretons reflect this clearly, with many becoming skilled mages, enchanters, and scholars, or even battle mages. But despite their latent elven blood, Bretons are firmly considered men in Tamriel's politics, and are usually loyal to the Empire, as High Rock was a cornerstone of the Septim Empire. They are sometimes called the mongrel race due to their mixed lineage, but Bretons themselves take pride in their unique identity. But the Bretons' origin goes back to the First Era, when the Aldmeri settlers known as the Dureni ruled over the northwest of Tamriel. The Dureni ruled a caste of human subjects, and over generations of intermarriage and concubinage, a hybrid population, the Manmer, emerged. These became the Bretons, ostensibly human in appearance, but with just enough elven blood to give them an affinity for magic. Eventually, the Dureni power waned, and those Manmer became the free Breton people, establishing the many Breton kingdoms and duchies of High Rock, such as Daggerfall, Wayrest, and Camlorn. Bretons have a long history of political intrigue, considering High Rock's many city-states often schemed against each other. Additionally, they also have a history of standing against aggressive neighbors, like repelling orc invasions, and later, joining the Septim Empire. A famous event in Breton history in the Third Era is known as the Warp in the West, where a magical phenomenon suddenly resolved much of High Rock's conflict and reshaped the region's politics. The Warp in the West left the Bay Area with an astounding 4 city-states compared to the original 44 it had, after an unknown series of cataclysms occurred. However, as mentioned, this brought peace to the area, with some calling it the miracle of peace. Religiously, Bretons follow the 8 divines, and traditionally also Talos as the 9th. Until the ban. And additionally, they also have some local hero deities, such as Saint Alessia, who is imperial but revered nonetheless, and Pelena Whitestrake, found in stories. Bretons are also associated with witch covens and druidic practices in some lore. The wilderness of High Rock has hedge wizards and witches with unique old ways, but by the 4th Era, Bretons have fully integrated into the Empire. While Skyrim primarily consists of Nordic people, you'll encounter several Bretons across the province, often seen in roles that involve magic, knowledge, or trade, as Bretons excel as mages, and indeed many court wizards, and, in the College of Winterhold, there are many members who are Breton. For example, Mirabelle, the Master Wizard second in command of the College of Winterhold, and Colette Morentz, the Restoration Magic Instructor, are both Bretons contributing significantly to Skyrim's magical community. Sibyl Stentor, the court mage in Solitude, is another Breton, illustrating how Bretons often find themselves in positions dealing with arcane or unusual arts. Bretons also show up in other skilled professions. Delphine, the blade operative in Skyrim, is also a Breton. She's a capable warrior and spy, reflecting the Breton versatility. In the Thieves Guild, the infamous leader, Mercer Frey, turns out to also be a Breton. But many of the enemies we fight are also Breton. Another example being the Forsworn found in the Reach. The Reachmen, after all, share an ancestry with Bretons. And this is particularly significant, with the Forsworn uprising in Markarth essentially being a conflict between Nords and local Breton-descended population. Their leader, Madanach, the King in Rags, is a Breton, and the Reachmen's mystical druid practices, like hag-ravens and hedge magic, harken to old Brittonic druidism. Thus, Bretons in Skyrim can be both allies and adversaries. Economically, Bretons often serve as merchants, innkeepers, or guild traders. Their natural charm and education suit them for mercantile roles. Thanks to their mixed blood, Bretons have an inborn resistance to magic. This leads to a significant edge in combat, as it makes Bretons much more resistant against spells than other races. In lore, it's often noted that Bretons are born with spells in their blood, making them both resistant and adept. They also have the power of Dragon Skin, a daily ability letting them absorb magicka from hostile spells for a short time. This ability highlights how Bretons can turn enemy magic to their own advantage, essentially nullifying an enemy mage's attacks and replenishing their own magicka, a reflection of their spell absorption talent. In terms of skills, Bretons excel at almost all arcane arts. They start with a high bonus to conjuration magic. They also get skill boosts in alchemy, illusion, restoration, and speech. This combination implies a Breton is well suited to be a mage or bard, blending magical talent with charm. Their proficiency in speech, persuasion, and commerce ties to their educated upbringing. Many Breton nobles are schooled in diplomacy, after all. Though Bretons aren't typically as robust in martial combat as Nords or Redguards, but their versatility allows some to become excellent spell swords or battle mages. A Breton knight often supplements skills at arms with enchantments and clever tactics. But all of this underscores the half-elven nature of Bretons. In Skyrim, they straddle the line between the magical elven influence and the human societies, making them some of the most versatile and intriguing characters we can find in Skyrim. Altmer, or High Elves, the Golden Ones of Somerset. Tall, golden-skinned, and often shrouded in an air of haughty nobility, the Altmer are among the most prominent elven races in Tamriel. They hail from the Somerset Isles, known in their language as Eleanor, and are known to be the most magically gifted people in all of Nirn. Altmer typically have shimmering golden or bronze skin, almond-shaped eyes, often green or yellow, and very pronounced pointed ears. On average, they're the tallest of the races. In Skyrim, Altmer characters are visibly taller than others, even taller than Nords in some cases. High Elves consider themselves the direct descendants of the Altmer, the progenitor elves, and often uphold very ancient traditions. Culturally, they are proud, extremely educated, and often quite aloof or arrogant, especially towards humans. Their society in Somerset is highly hierarchical and steeped in wizardry, producing many of Tamriel's greatest mages. And Altmer's lifespan is also longer than humans, giving them a long view of history. Importantly, in the Fourth Era, the Altmer are the dominant power behind the Aldmeri Dominion, whose ruling party, the Talmor, are fanatical Altmer supremacists. Thus, in Skyrim, High Elf often equates to Talmor in the eyes of locals, though not every Altmer supports the Talmor. The Altmer trace their lineage to the Aldmer, the first elves who arrived on Tamriel from the legendary lost continent, Aldmeris. According to the Altmer lore, they're the ones who have retained the most pure blood of the Aldmeri lineage, hence High Elves meaning exalted or pure. They established the Crystal Tower in the civilization of Somerset Isles thousands of years ago. Some Aldmer left Somerset, becoming the other elf races, like the Chimer or Dunmer, Bosmer, and Aelids. But the Altmer stayed and developed an advanced magic-centric society. Altmer pride themselves on high culture, poetry, mastery of the arcane arts, and genealogy. They often keep detailed family lineage records to ensure their blood remains pure, and some practice selective breeding or eugenics in a bid to maintain what they see as the perfection of their race. In their religion, they revere the same divines, especially Magnus, the god of magic, and Auriel, their version of Akatosh, but they interpret creation differently. Many Altmer believe their spirits are fragments of the divine, and some radical Talmor even seek to undo creation to return to a godly state. This plays into the Talmor's secret agenda. It's hinted that the Talmor ultimately want to dismantle the mortal world, Mundus, to regain Altmer immortality, an extreme and esoteric goal. Historically, the Somerset Isles kept mostly to themselves until the end of the Second Era, when the Altmer formed the first Aldmeri Dominion. In the current Fourth Era, however, after the Oblivion Crisis destabilized the Empire, the Aldmer's Talmor seized power in Somerset and Valenwood, forming a new dominion. They launched the Great War against the Empire in the Fourth Era, and nearly won. The war ended with the White Gold Concordat that imposed harsh terms on the Empire, like banning Talos worship. And by Skyrim's time, the Aldmer Talmor operate in Imperial territory as enforcers of the Concordat, hunting down Talos worshippers and dissidents. For this reason, this makes them deeply unpopular in Skyrim, as the Nords loathe them for outlawing Talos and for their justiciar's heavy-handed tactics. Despite this, Altmer historically have contributed much knowledge. Their Isle of Artaeum was home to the Sigic Order, an ancient monastic order of mystics who predate the Mages Guild. All told, Altmer stand at the pinnacle of magic lore, and also at the heart of the current political tension in Skyrim. In Skyrim, Altmer are a minority, but a noticeable one, especially due to the Talmor presence. The Talmor Embassy in the hills of Hafengar is a key location run by Elenwen, the first emissary of the Talmor. Many Altmer encountered are Talmor justiciars, roaming agents who patrol roads, interrogating or attacking anyone they suspect of Talos worship or dissidents. This has created a climate of fear where even non-Talmor Altmer in Skyrim can face mistrust from Nords. Yet not all Altmer in Skyrim are aligned with the Dominion. For example, Legate Fassendil is an Altmer who serves in the Imperial Legion, having defected from the Talmor due to their brutality. He commands Imperial troops in the Rift, proving that some Altmer oppose the Talmor. There are also the Altmer simply pursuing personal endeavors. Calcelmo, the court wizard of Markarth, is an Altmer scholar devoted to studying the Dwemer, although he's more of an academic and is begrudgingly tolerated by the Nords because of his expertise, and perhaps because Markarth's Jarl is pro-Empire. In Windhelm, Norane is an Altmer who works as a merchant and secretly as a fence for the Thieves Guild. She faces prejudice, but carves out a living through trade. At the College of Winterhold, we see Altmer instructors like Feralda, who specializes in destruction magic, and Ankano, who's actually a Talmor agent embedded as an advisor to the Archmage. But the High Elves in Skyrim come with clear advantages for magic. They have the largest reserve of magicka naturally. They also possess the Highborn power, which allows them to regenerate magicka extremely quickly for a short duration. In practice, this means an Altmer mage can unleash spells rapidly and recover magicka in the heat of battle, leading to a tremendous edge for spellcasters. Not surprisingly, Altmer have skill bonuses in all the core magical disciplines: destruction, alteration, illusion, conjuration, restoration, and even enchanting. They are the choice for those who want to master the arcane arts. One might say magic flows in their very blood. Unlike some previous games, in Skyrim the Altmer no longer carry a weakness to elemental magic. In earlier lore, their bodies were so attuned to magic that they actually were more vulnerable to magical damage. But in Skyrim, this isn't present, making them less of a glass cannon than before, so to speak. They also don't have any innate elemental resistances, like Dunmer or Nord, but their magicka boost and highborn power more than compensate for any lack of physical perks. But you often find them skilled in speech. Their physical weakness might be that Altmer are not typically as strong or hardy as humans. In gameplay, they have standard health and stamina, but their tall stature makes them appear willowy. Lore-wise, Altmer live very long and spend a lot of time perfecting a single skill or art. That means an Altmer swordsman, for instance, could be extremely skilled. There are indeed Altmer duelists, but culturally they lean to magic over brute force. Thus, the Altmer's presence in Skyrim is fraught with tension. They carry the lofty legacy of the Mer, but in the land of the Nords, They are often seen as either an occupying force or odd outsiders, whether one admires their intellect or despises their arrogance. The Altmer undeniably hold many of Skyrim's secrets in their long-lived minds and archives. Dunmer, or Dark Elves, the ashen-faced exiles of Morrowind. With their ashen-gray skin and glowing red eyes, the Dunmer, or Dark Elves, are an immediately recognizable race. They come from the neighboring province of Morrowind, but many Dunmer now live as refugees in Skyrim due to the recent catastrophe in their homeland. Dunmer are known for being reserved, proud, and resilient, shaped by a culture that survived a hostile environment, that being the volcanic ashlands of Morrowind. They possess innate talents in both stealth and magic, and are often fiercely loyal to their own clans and traditions. Physically, Dunmer are of elven build, and are usually mid-height between Altmer and Bosmer, or Wood Elves. Culturally, they are the inheritors of the ancient Chimer, pale elves who were cursed and turned dark-skinned by the goddess Azura long ago. The Dunmer have a complex society once dominated by great houses and the Tribunal Temple, but after the Red Year disaster, their society has been shattered, leading many to seek new lives elsewhere. The history of the Dunmer is one, unfortunately, of tragedy and transformation. Originally, they were Chimer, a group of Aldmer, who followed the prophet Veloth to Morrowind in the Merithic era, worshipping Daedric princes like Azura, Boethia, and Mephala. In the First Era, after a climactic event called the Battle of Red Mountain, the Chimer were cursed by Azura for the actions of their leaders, the Tribunal. With this, their skin turned to a dark ash gray and their eyes fire red, making them the Dunmer, cursed, or Dark Elves. But despite this, they embraced this new identity, and for millennia lived in Morrowind under a unique system, the Tribunal. Their god kings, Almalexia, Vivek, and Sotha Sil ruled alongside the great houses, like House Redoran, Telvanni, Hlalu, and so on. They also had nomadic Ashlanders preserving old ways. Morrowind was alien to Outlanders, after all, with their giant insects as transportation, bizarre mushroom towers, and a penchant for ancestor worship. This, of course, can clearly be seen back in the day when Morrowind first graced PCs and the Xbox, which is where I had first played it. But fast forward to recent history in the Third Era. The Tribunal were exposed and the blight of Dagoth ended, which also led to the Tribunal losing their godhood. After this came the disasters. In the Fourth Era, the Red Year, the massive volcano Red Mountain erupted, devastating Vardenfell and parts of mainland Morrowind. The Dunmer's main city, Vivek, was destroyed by a floating rock, also known as the Ministry of Truth, when it came crashing down. And if that wasn't enough, the Argonians of Black Marsh, once slaves of the Dunmer, took advantage of the chaos and invaded southern Morrowind in revenge. The already crippled Dunmer were further slaughtered, and many fleeing the region altogether. As a result, by the time of Skyrim, a large portion of Dunmer exists in other provinces, notably that being Skyrim itself and Solstheim. Solstheim, an island northeast of Skyrim, was even granted to the Dunmer by the High King of Skyrim as a refuge. House Redoran took charge of the isle, and it's now the new Morrowind, in some sense. In Skyrim proper, the most significant Dunmer community is in Windhelm's Grey Quarter. This is essentially a ghetto where Dark Elf refugees live in poor conditions, often facing open prejudice from the Nord majority. The term Grey Quarter itself is derogatory, referencing both the ashen skin of the elves and the rundown nature of that district. Thus, Dunmer and Skyrim carry a chip on their shoulder. Once they had a great nation. Now they're treated as outsiders and even forbidden to worship freely, with many still honoring the reclamations, Azura, Boethia, and Mephala, instead of the imperial divines. Despite all this, the Dark Elves are tenacious survivors. They bring with them to Skyrim their skills in magic, especially of the destructive persuasion, and their mercantile or crafting abilities. They also bring a bit of their flavor. You'll find Dunmer vendors selling ash yams or salt rice, and some still follow the ghost fence tradition of keeping ancestor spirits, as seen by one Dunmer quest in Windhelm to find someone's ancestral sword. And with all of this being said, Dunmer are discriminated against, but they in turn often look down on Argonians. Windhelm's Argonians aren't even allowed inside the city, yet even the Dunmer, only marginally more accepted, express prejudice towards the scaly beast race. This truly shows the complex social dynamic. The oppressed can also be oppressors in Tamriel's tangled ethnic web. And also goes to remind you that in the Elder Scrolls games, races and their discrimination often play a huge role in the game's overall plots and quests. But how are Dunmer in combat roles? Well, they're particularly well-rounded, but mainly attuned to fire and stealth, as they have a natural resistance to fire, which is very fitting given their heritage in volcanic Morrowind and surviving the ash storms and even Dragon's Fire in this age. Their signature power is Ancestor's Wrath, which is an ability that surrounds them in a ghostly flame cloak, burning any nearby with fire for 60 seconds. Essentially, a Dunmer can invoke the power of their ancestors to wreath themselves in fire, a powerful defensive and offensive move in close combat. These traits underscore that Dunmer are forged by fire, both literally and metaphorically through hardships. In terms of skills, Skyrim's Dunmer have bonuses leaning towards a spell sword or scout playstyle, with destruction, sneaking, light armor, and marksmanship being prime. They also get small boosts in alchemy and illusion. The picture of them is a race that's adaptable. They can creep in the shadows or unleash destructive magic as needed. And this, of course, matches the lore, where many Dunmer were known as Nightblades, a kind of class mixing stealth and magic, or spell swords. Notably, in older lore, the Morag Tong, the Dunmer Assassin Guild, specialized in stealth and magic to eliminate targets. In Skyrim, the player can meet Morag Tong remnants, found in the Dragonborn DLC, and feel how Dunmer use this skill set. Another innate aspect, Dunmer often have strong personalities and force of will. Though not in a numeric stat, it often comes out in their abrasive or confident dialogue. All in all, they're survivors, their fire resistance symbolically representing their inner fire against adversity. And in the end, the Dunmer stand as a testament to endurance. They've quite literally been through fire and ash, and in Skyrim's cold, they still burn with resolve, making their way as best they can. Bosmer, or Wood Elves. The nimble archers of the forest. The Bosmer are the diminutive, swift, and sharp-eyed elves indigenous to the thick forests of Valenwood. They're Tamriel's most renowned archers, known for their unparalleled skill with the bow. It's often said that there are no finer archers in all of Tamriel than the Bosmer. Physically, Bosmer are the smallest of elf races, with males and females typically shorter and leaner than humans. They tend to have brown or greenish tinged skin, pointed ears, and often a mischievous or feral look. And even in some cases, some are said to have grown horns or antlers on their head. Culturally, the Wood Elves are free-spirited, highly adaptable, and deeply attuned to nature, but they also have some very strange cultural practices owing to the Green Pact, their divine treaty with the forest god Ifrey, binding them to the forest's protection in exchange for the ability to shapeshift and adopt the forest as their home. Throughout history, Bosmer society was tribal and disunited. They had many clanfolds and city-states in Valenwood, often in massive walking tree cities or treetop villages. They seldom sought empire, but they have been pulled into others' empires. In the Second Era, the Bosmer joined the First Aldmeri Dominion as junior partners to the Altmer. In the Third Era, Valenwood was conquered or co-opted by the Septim Empire, and in the current 4th era, Valenwood is part of the 3rd Aldmeri Dominion. Thus, Bosmer find themselves allied with the Altmer politically. Many Bosmer soldiers fought alongside Altmer in the Great War against the Empire, with that zeal not even being close to the famous Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt tells of the Bosmer in dire need, using their ability to shapeshift into a horde of savage beasts to destroy their enemies, though the participants lose their individuality forever. It's been invoked only rarely in history. These factors contribute to a perception of Bosmer as rustic, but dangerous, if underestimated. They're also cheerful and curious by nature. When not bound by their treaty. In Tamriel's economy, Bosmer have often been hunters, guides, and mercenaries, taking advantage of their woodcraft. They're not known for scholarship or heavy industry, but their bows and arrows. Bosmer bone bows are legendary and are highly prized, made without harming trees by using animal sinew and bone. They also produce a unique liquor, Jaga, a kind of fermented milk drink, and Rotmeth, a thick alcoholic brew. With Bosmer quite literally meaning forest folk, this encapsulates their identity to a T. But being far from their native Valenwood, Bosmer and Skyrim are few. Those that are present often serve as scouts, archers, or rogues. A very early encounter is Faendal in Riverwood, a Bosmer archer who works at the mill and competes for a girl's affection, Camilla, with a Nord, Sven. Faendal exemplifies a Bosmer trying to fit into Nord society, working a low-key job, but he's also an archery trainer and can become a follower, demonstrating Bosmer archery prowess and perhaps their jealousy in the love triangle letters you navigate. Many Bosmer in Skyrim are also shown to be great huntsmen, and thus tend to sell meat in the markets. In general, wood elves in Skyrim exist on the fringes, fitting their background as wanderers and outsiders. They aren't the movers and shakers of politics in this land, but they contribute in their own ways, as brilliant archers, crafty thieves, or helpful behind-the-scenes operatives. Many of them live off the land like they would in Valenwood, and with Skyrim's vast forests, like in Falkreath and the Rift, provide a suitable environment for Bosmer to feel somewhat at home, albeit with a much colder climate. The Bosmer have some of the most distinct racial abilities reflecting their woodland affinity. They possess some resistance to poison and disease, an enormous advantage in the world of venomous spiders and skeever plagues. This likely stems from their robust adaptation to the forests of Valenwood. Bosmer also have a unique power called Command Animal, which allows them to make any animal their ally for 60 seconds. In gameplay, this means a wood elf can calm or even rally animals, like bears and wolves, to assist, or at least not attack them, which comes quite in handy for a hunter traveling the wilds. Lore-wise, this mirrors Bosmer's famed ability to communicate with creatures of the forest. Many tales speak of Bosmer charming beasts with a few words or calls. However, they do not have a bonus magical pool like Altmer, but they don't have a need for this. It's innate. In terms of skill bonuses, appropriately, Bosmer start with the highest bonus in archery of any race. They're also quite skilled in light armor, sneaking, lockpicking, pickpocketing, and alchemy. Essentially, all the hallmark skills of a stealthy ranger rogue. This predisposition makes them fantastic thieves or scouts. And indeed, many of Skyrim's Thieves Guild members are Bosmer, which align with those stats. With their alchemy proficiency tying into their survivalist theme, they're quite acute at making any spells or potions. And while you think this would impact their green pact, Bosmer outside Valenwood aren't usually required to follow the pact to its same specifications, as it doesn't harm the Valenwood flora and fauna, with this also being why they import their own wood instead of taking it from the surrounding trees. Another key aspect of the Green Pact, and what some consider to be the worst trait that Bosmer have, is their inability to let anything go to waste. For a Bosmer that hunts a deer, every part of the animal will be used. But in warfare, if an enemy is killed in combat, This also means that the Bosmer have to use every part of the enemy they killed, thus making them frowned upon for their cannibalistic tendencies. And this is especially why you'll see so many friendly Bosmer out on your travels. While not all Bosmer follow the Green Pact, the ones that do make it a point not to lean too heavily into their cannibalistic tendencies when possible. Bosmer are not typically frontline heavy warriors or major magic users. One would rarely see a Bosmer excelling at being a battle mage, though there's absolutely no rule against it. I happen to be a Bosmer magician myself in recent playthroughs. Instead, they excel at asymmetrical warfare, sniping from afar, setting traps, and moving unseen. They're also excellent at scouting and reconnaissance, something the Imperial Legion makes use of. And presumably the Talmor as well, likely employing some Bosmer agents for their skills. A subtle advantage Bosmer have is their small size. They're harder to hit, and it makes them easier to sneak around. All in all, the Bosmer's presence in Skyrim is felt quietly, in every flawless arrow that takes down a deer, and every subtle movement in the shadows. They may not dominate the political scene, but their legendary archery and natural stealth make them invaluable in roles they do take. Whether it's the friendly hunter sharing a campfire on the road, or the unseen agent slipping into an enemy fort, the Wood Elves thrive wherever their wits and bows can carry the day. Orsimer, or Orcs, the proud outcasts and master smiths. The Orsimer are a race of Mer, elves, often mistaken for brutish humanoids due to their muscular builds, greenish skin, and fierce tusked faces. In fact, Orsimer in Elvish means pariah folk, reflecting their origin as outcast elves turned by a curse. Orcs are traditionally found in the mountainous frontiers of Tamriel, notably the Hrothgarian Mountains of High Rock and areas between Skyrim and Hammerfell. In Skyrim, orcs live both among the population, sometimes as city blacksmiths or sellswords, and in stronghold settlements of their own. They are known for their exceptional smithing skills, warrior culture, and strict code of honor, the Code of Malakath. Physically, an orc is powerfully built, with skin tones ranging from olive green to charcoal, often with prominent lower canines forming tusks, and often sporting war paint or tribal ornaments. Culturally, they are highly disciplined, martial, and clannish. An orc values strength, courage, and the favor of their deity, Malakath, above all. Despite originating from elven stock, orcs are typically not gifted in magic. Instead, they excel as the toughest frontline warriors and armorers of Tamriel. They have a reputation as barbarians in the eyes of other races, which is a bit unfair. They have their own sophisticated, if harsh, society. The story of the orcs begins with tragedy and betrayal. In mythic times, the Orsimer's progenitor was Trinimac, an Aldmeri hero god. When Trinimac confronted the Daedric prince Boethia, Boethia devoured Trinimac and cursed him, transforming Trinimac into the Daedric prince, Malakath, and his followers, once the Aldmer, into the first orcs. Thus, orcs are actually a Murish people who were changed, much like the Dunmer in a way. Their fair elf features twisted into the beastly appearance they now have, earning them scorn from other elves and men. Cast out and without a homeland, the early orcs lived in strongholds across Tamriel. Eventually, an orcish leader named Torug Gro Igron founded the first Orsinium, meaning Orc Town, in High Rock. Orsinium has been a dream and a reality on and off. It's been built, destroyed, and rebuilt multiple times over the centuries. The Bretons of High Rock and Redguards of Hammerfell historically united to destroy Orsinium in the First Era, in the Siege of Orsinium, which scattered the orcs. But each time, the orcs persisted, reconstructing their city elsewhere. And by the late Third Era, Orsinium was recognized as a titular kingdom in the Empire. Uriel Septim VII even granted it support. But early in the 4th era, it was sacked yet again. The surviving orcs moved to Skyrim's and Hammerfell's border mountains and rebuilt Orsinium in a new location in the western reach between Skyrim and Hammerfell. This modern Orsinium status during Skyrim is a bit unclear, but orc strongholds in Skyrim often mention sending resources to the city or having kin there, suggesting that Orsinium still exists, or at least the idea of it does. The Code of Malakath guides orcish life. It's a simple but strict code. Don't steal. Don't murder your kin. Fight with honor, and the strong chief leads. With this worship of Malakath, they view him as a protective, if harsh god, who demands strength from them, in contrast to how other races malign Malakath as a Daedric prince of outcasts. Malakath's commandments influence the chiefdom system. Orc strongholds, like those in Skyrim, are led by a chief who is the strongest male, and he who takes all wives. Other males must either challenge him or leave to find a new stronghold, or live among the other races. It's a tribal patriarchal structure, which outsiders often misunderstand. Female orcs, however, can hold powers as the Forge Wife, Hunt Wife, Wise Woman, and so on, each serving a vital role. The smithing tradition of the orcs is particularly celebrated. Orcish craftsmanship produces some of the best medium-grade armor and weapons found in Tamriel. Historically even, orcish armorers were even sought by the Empire to smith for the Legion. But their role in Skyrim is much smaller. In Skyrim, there are 4 orc strongholds that exist: Dushnik Yal, Morkazgur, Narzulbur, and Largashbur. Each is a walled compound of log palisades, home to an orc clan. If the player is an orc, they're often welcomed as bloodkin automatically. Other races, however, must earn their trust. For example, helping the orc miner in Markarth's stronghold or bringing a certain item to an orc chief can grant this status. Once bloodkin, you may trade with stronghold smiths for their superior equipment and be welcomed inside. The strongholds in Skyrim show orcs trying to stay insular, preserving their culture in a foreign land. Within the narrative, one stronghold, Largashbur, has a prominent quest, the Cursed Tribe. There, the orcs are in a crisis. Their chief, Yamaras, has failed in his duties, and Malakath has cursed the tribe. But outside of these strongholds, orcs are also integrated into Skyrim's cosmopolitan society. Many take up jobs as blacksmiths or warriors, reflecting their cultural strengths. In Markarth, the city's talented blacksmith, Gorzagra Boggle, is an orc woman. Her presence underscores that if you see fine steelwork in Skyrim, an orc might be behind it. In Understone Keep, Mothgrove Boggle, Gorza's brother, is the Jarl's personal smith, forging and maintaining equipment for the Jarl's guard. But besides their smithing, orcs are arguably one of the most formidable warriors on Tamriel when it comes to raw physical combat. Their signature ability, Berserker Rage, exemplifies this. When activated, an orc deals double damage and takes only half damage for 60 seconds. It essentially turns an orc into an unstoppable juggernaut for a short period. This ability aligns with every fantasy of the orc berserker and is consistent with lore descriptions of orcish fury in battle. But in terms of magic, orcs don't have a built-in resistance to any elements, but they hardly need it when they can outkill whatever's trying to kill them. As craftsmen, all orcs in Skyrim start with a bonus to heavy armor and smithing, showing that from youth, they are trained to wear and forge armor. They also receive small boosts to one-handed, two-handed, block, and enchanting, a toolkit for a heavy warrior with some magical item augmentation. The enchanting bonus might surprise, but recall that orcs and strongholds have traditional wise women who likely do primitive enchanting or potion brewing. And historically, orcs revere craftsmanship, which includes enchanting their gear. To conclude, orcs in Skyrim live somewhat on the fringes, literally in strongholds on the edges of whole territories, but they continue as suppliers of high-quality arms and armor as steadfast mercenaries and fighters. They carry a historical burden of being outsiders, from being cursed by a Daedric prince to having their homeland repeatedly destroyed. Yet they endure with pride. Orc adventurers often seek to prove their honor or to bring glory back to their tribe. In the broader sense, the Orsimer's story in Skyrim is about finding honor in a world that has often denied them respect. And every orc character you meet, whether grumpy librarian or devout smith, echoes that theme. Malakath's philosophy is harsh, but strangely uplifting. Only the strong are worthy of respect, and through suffering we grow. The orcs of Skyrim exemplify this by surviving and even thriving in one of Tamriel's harshest regions, turning adversity into strength, and woe to anyone who underestimates them. Falmer, or Snow Elves, the lost race beneath Skyrim's ice. Before the Nords, before even the first humans set foot in Skyrim, there was an elven race known as the Snow Elves. These ancient elves, or Falmer in the elven tongue, once ruled Skyrim in the Merithic era, building a proud and advanced civilization in Skyrim's north. They are sometimes called Ice Elves or Ancient Falmer, and are described as having had snowy pale skin and great aptitude in magic. However, the Snow Elves met a grim fate. Today, when one says Falmer in Skyrim, they usually refer to the twisted, pale, blind creatures that lurk in caves and Dwemer runes, often called the Betrayed or simply the Falmer creatures. These deformed beings are indeed the descendants of the Snow Elves, transformed over millennia of slavery and subterranean exile into degenerate, sightless monsters. The story of how a once noble race became the chittering, feral Falmer is one of Skyrim's darkest secrets, and one that ties directly into Nord and Dwemer history. The Snow Elves were Skyrim's original elven inhabitants. In the early Merithic era, they had an advanced society across Skyrim. Evidence of this includes ruins and Nordic legends. When human settlers, Atmorans, arrived, at first there was coexistence, but tensions rose as humans multiplied. The tipping point was the infamous Night of Tears, mentioned at the beginning of this video. The Snow Elves attacked and sacked the Nord city of Sarthal, slaughtering its inhabitants. Nordic legends claim this was out of fear or jealousy. The elves supposedly wanted a powerful artifact the humans found, later known as the Eye of Magnus. Ysgramor and his sons escaped and returned with the 500 companions, leading a genocidal retaliation that all but wiped out the Snow Elves from the surface. The remaining Snow Elves were desperate. In their final stand at the Battle of Moosering on Solstheim, they were defeated when their leader, the Snow Prince, fell. Leaderless and cornered, some Snow Elves fled or hid, but large groups of survivors made a fateful choice. They sought refuge with the Dwemer, the Deep Elves, or Dwarves, who inhabited underground cities in Skyrim. The Dwemer agreed to shelter the Snow Elves, but at a high price. The Snow Elves had to consume a toxic fungus which blinded them. This act ensured the Snow Elves would be forever dependent on the Dwemer for food, and it prevented rebellion by robbing them of their sight. Essentially, the Dwemer enslaved the Snow Elves, slowly twisting them into a subspecies. Generations of Snow Elves were born and lived in darkness, captives of the cruel Dwemer. Over centuries, they degenerated physically and culturally. Centuries underground, fed on fungi, blinded and bred as servants, turned the once majestic Snow Elves into the Falmer we know today. Feral humanoids adapted to cave life. The term Falmer indeed was the old word for Snow Elf, but now the last true Snow Elves consider it a derogatory term used for the degenerate brethren, translating to the betrayed. The ultimate twist of fate came around the 700th year in the First Era, at the Battle of Red Mountain in Morrowind. The Dwemer people suddenly disappeared from the world, possibly due to their tinkering with the heart of Lorkhan. In an instant, the Falmer found their slave masters gone. They were free, but they were deep underground, blinded, and far removed from their original culture. They survived by breeding and spreading through the endless caves and ruins, becoming a menace to any intruders. They became a tribal, cavern-dwelling race with rudimentary weapons made from chitin shells and metal salvaged gear, and a hatred for all surface dwellers, perhaps remembering dimly the dual betrayals by the Nords and Dwemer. The Falmer have also tamed and befriended Karis, a kind of giant subterranean insect creature, as pets and livestock. But despite this, the Falmer are dangerous foes, stealthy, ruthless, and numerous. They often set up snares and tripwires in their lairs, indicating some cunning and intelligence. As it's very easy to forget, these still are living creatures with their own society, who once were a grand and respected people. But some speculate that given time, Falmer might reclaim the surface in force. In the Dawnguard DLC, you meet Knight Paladin Gelibor, one of the last true Snow Elves, who has not been corrupted or blinded. He and his brother survived by secluding in an unreachable temple for millennia. Gelibor provides a first-hand account. The Snow Elves were proud, prosperous, and their society nearly rivaled the Altmers in sophistication. He calls the corrupted Falmer the betrayed by the Dwemer's cruelty. Through Gelibor's quest, we see a stark contrast. He is an articulate and honorable Mer, with exquisite ancient armor, whereas the betrayed Falmer we fight are savage and cruel. Ultimately, Gelibor remains possibly the sole free snow elf in Tamriel, his brother having turned into a vampire, bastardizing the remains of the snow elves. The Falmer as they are today, though, have no special magical powers, but they have adapted to dark combat. They often fight in packs and are adept with bows coated in poison derived from Karis. They also use primitive magic like summoning frostbite spiders or casting simple spells, implying some retained magical knack. They are blind, but their hearing is very acute. Sneaking by a Falmer can be hard because they see by sound. They also have a social structure, believe it or not. Adventurers have encountered Falmer Shadow Masters, Night Prowlers, Gloom Lurkers, indicating different ranks or castes. They build tents and hovels out of coarse chitin and incorporate Dwemer metal scrap. The sheer amount of Falmer present in some runes like Blackreach indicates they breed very quickly or live long, or both. It's quite possible that Falmer have become a subterranean civilization of their own, albeit a strange one, without the guidance and slavery of the Dwemer. The existence of Falmer is a cautionary tale in Skyrim. The Nords see them as just monsters, likely not realizing these were the same elves their heroes fought in days of yore. Although not all of Skyrim's settlers feel this way, some do indeed ponder the Dwemer's role in the Falmer's fate, but the Dwemer-Falmer relationship is one of oppressor and oppressed. Ironically, both are now gone from surface history, a sign that cruelty often circles back. The dwarven automatons found in ruins will attack Falmer on sight, which is essentially lingering Dwemer security still trying to exterminate or test the Falmer. Yet, the Falmer now dominate many Dwemer sites, suggesting they ultimately won possession after the Dwemer disappeared. But among the Nords, even snow elves survive mostly in myth, as deadly sorcerers of the past. The average Nord doesn't connect them with Falmer. Falmer, to a Nord now, means the nasty cave creatures. The tale of the Falmer is truly one of the most tragic sagas in Skyrim. A proud people effectively destroyed twice, once by war with the Nords, then by enslavement by Dwemer. Their secrets include the fact that the terrifying creatures in the dark were once as refined as high elves. For an adventurer now, encountering the Falmer is dealing with relentless hostility. But for a historian, it's like walking among the cursed remnants of a bygone age, Skyrim's depths hold the echoes of the Snow Elves' sorrow and vengeance, making every raid on a Falmer hive an unintended continuation of an ancient conflict. Dwemer, or Dwarves, the vanished underground engineers. The Dwemer, often called dwarves by men, were a mysterious race of Mer known for their technological genius and sudden disappearance. Though long gone from Nirn, their legacy looms large in Skyrim. Vast subterranean cities in the mountains, guarded by autonomous machines, still patrolling silent halls. The Dwemer were actually elves. The word Dwemer means deep folk, kin to the Chimer and Altmer, but culturally very different. Rationalists and inventors rather than mystics, some say. They were shorter and stockier than other elves, which might explain the moniker dwarves given by giants or Nords. Dwemer society was highly advanced. They built in stone and metal, devising steam-powered mechanisms, mechanical guardians, and great agricultural marvels. In Skyrim, locations like Blackreach, Erkenthand, Muzzulft, Markarth's Nishanzel, and many other remnants of Dwemer presence I don't even want to try to pronounce. Yet no living Dwemer remains, at least on Tamriel mainland. The entire race vanished in an instant during the Battle of Red Mountain. This enigmatic event has never been conclusively solved, making the Dwemer one of Tamriel's greatest riddles. The Dwemer had colonies across Tamriel's north and west, notably in Restane and modern Skyrim. They lived alongside the Chimer, ancestors of Dunmer, in Morrowind until tensions exploded in the War of the First Council, Dwarves versus Chimer and Nords, at Red Mountain. In Skyrim, evidence suggests Dwemer coexisted tensely with Nords too. For example, the city of Markarth is built on the ruins of Nishanzel, a Dwemer city that existed while Nords were also in the Reach. The Snow Elf story intertwines. Skyrim's Dwemer took in Snow Elf refugees and enslaved them, as we previously covered. But despite this barbaric enslavement, Dwemer achievements were remarkable. They crafted the Heart of Lorkhan into a tool in Morrowind, built the Numidium, a brass god golem, and created Ethereum-based artifacts. They were also largely agnostic or atheistic. Unlike other Mer, they did not worship the Daedra or Aedra, considering gods irrelevant. Instead, they focused on logic, science, and building power themselves. This led to them attempting perhaps their greatest and final feat, using Kagranak's tools, enchanted instruments, on the heart of a god to elevate themselves to immortality, or even godhood. According to lore, at the moment of doing so during the Battle of Red Mountain, the entire Dwemer race disappeared from the world. Whether they were annihilated, transported to another plane, or became something else entirely is hotly debated by scholars. But any theories these scholars try to come up with runs them in circles. The only known survivor was an eccentric Dwemer named Yagrum Bogarn, found in the events of Morrowind, who survived by being in another dimension known as the Outer Realm. He was alive, but afflicted with corpus disease, a kind of leprosy, and could only speculate on his people's fate. But in Skyrim's time, Yagrum is likely long gone, or in hiding, and no other Dwemer have emerged. While Dwemer themselves are gone, their ruins are everywhere and play a big role in Skyrim's game and lore. These ruins are filled with automated defenses, things like dwarven spiders, dwarven spears, and the mighty dwarven centurions. These constructs still dutifully guard the halls, attacking intruders, be they human, Falmer, or otherwise. Adventurers often explore Dwemer ruins in search of treasure. The main quest of Skyrim sends you to Blackreach, a stunning underground cavern that was a central Dwemer city, to find an Elder Scroll. Blackreach is filled with glowing mushrooms, Dwemer buildings, a sun-like orb mechanism, and hordes of Falmer, a real showpiece of Dwemer brilliance. and its takeover by Falmer. The College of Winterhold's quest also deals with a mysterious Dwemer artifact, the Eye of Magnus, speculated to be what the Snow Elves attacked Sarthal for. And in a side quest, you assist an academic, Septimus Cygnus, who is studying Dwemer technology to open a strange Dwemer lockbox. Even the city of Markarth, as mentioned before, is unique for repurposing the Dwemer city to suit their own needs. And in Markarth, sometimes you'll find strange devices in the depths of the ruins. These devices, for instance, include lexicons, cube storage-like devices that contain information, resonators, spinning orbs that react to sound or magic, and tonal locks, puzzles solved via sound, showing Dwemer knowledge of the tonal architecture. The tonal architectures were Dwemer high engineers. Kagranak was chief among them. In Dawnguard, the Ethereum Forge quest introduces Katria, the ghost of a Dunmer who died researching a lost Dwemer material, Ethereum, which could make miraculous artifacts. This quest reveals Dunmer found a rare crystal and warred internally for its control. They built a magnificent hidden forge, but after their disappearance, Ethereum knowledge vanished until Katria's rediscovery. Historically, Dwemer allied with Nords at times. In Morrowind, Dwemer and Chimer cooperated under the First Council until their war, the battle where Dwemer vanished and Lord Nerevar and his Chimer forces facing King Dunmac and his Dwemer. Interestingly, they were friends turned enemies due to a misunderstanding partly sown by Kagranak's experiments and external meddling, which, considering their friendliness, is somewhat surprising. By some accounts, Dwemer were not very friendly or emotional. They valued logic, often described as cold and brooding. Some texts called them disagreeable mer, who kept to themselves. But the Nords of Skyrim itself didn't call them dwarves out of nowhere. One legend says the giants, or a race of giants called the Mu, encountered the Dwemer and named them Deep Folk in giant language, which translated like dwarves to humans. Another tale says Nords just used dwarf as a term of slight because the Dwemer lived underground like little folk. Regardless, the term stuck across cultures. But from all of this, one can glean a philosophical angle. The Dwemer sought to transcend mortality by their own means, and in doing so, erased themselves from the mundus. But perhaps they succeeded in some twisted way. Perhaps their spirits melded with the heart into Numidium, which Tiber Septim later used to conquer Tamriel. For Skyrim, the importance of the Dwemer is less emotional, but regardless, they were highly practical. Their technology influences even the present, with their crossbow designs used by the Dawnguard. The Elder Scrolls themselves, those mystic artifacts, were safeguarded in Dwemer areas like Blackreach, implying Dwemer had knowledge of or dealings with them. But in Skyrim, the ancient plains and tundras wouldn't be complete without the ghosts of the Dwemers haunting them. Orsimer themselves inherited some smithing secrets from the Dwemer. The Falmer were created by them, Nords occupied their stone halls, and the silence of the Dwemers felt every time one wanders into an echoing, gear-clicking vault, reminding all that even the greatest empire of science can vanish in a moment, leaving only metal and stone. Their secrets remain tantalizing. Perhaps one day, one of their number, or one of their relics, will unravel the enigma. But in the meantime, adventurers will keep delving into their ruins, seeking treasure and answers amidst the paper and pistons, under the ever-watchful golden gaze of a dwarven centurion. And unfortunately, this is where we have to conclude for now. But there are still two incredibly important races of Tamriel we need to cover: the Argonians of Black Marsh and the Khajiit of Elsewhere. In truth, we ran out of time for this video. I myself am recording this voiceover at 4 in the morning and have been at it for like over 3 hours. So if you'd like to hear more in-depth research on these beast races, please consider subscribing to stay notified for when this part 2 to the races found in Skyrim drops. And above all, thank you very much for watching and listening. We're growing every day with your support, and we look forward to covering more lore and tales from the Elder Scrolls. So whether you're working, or sleeping, or using this as background noise, sincerely, thank you. And also, please let us know if you made it this far into the video what your favorite race to play as is. Personally, I've always gone for Nords because of their huge beards. I have one myself. But in recent playthroughs, I've been enjoying learning about the Bosmer, and I really love that they can grow antlers. It's really cool stuff. But with that, thank you for visiting the Clever Khajiit, and we hope to see you again soon. Take care.